is now Christ-like because we're on camera.
Just kidding, it's a joke. All right, I have in my notes, and Parker also has in his, that we left off on question number 21 in Proverbs 11, verse 15. Does that sound about right to everyone else's recollection? That's where we are, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 15. So, what is unusual about the contrast made in 11:15? Can I get a reader for that? Proverbs chapter 11, verse 15.
Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer harm, but he who hates striking hands in pledge is secure.
Okay, so what's the contrast here? Two different types of people. We have one person that likes to do what kind of stuff?
Lend money.
Lend money, put up security. What is security?
Get the money you're getting.
Yeah. Sort of like similar to co-signing or something as a guarantee. Like, yeah, I'll front this as a security deposit or whatever. So we have somebody that likes to do that, and then the opposite, the other person is the person who?
Spend money?
What's that?
Spend money?
Who doesn't put up money for other people. You know what I mean? So we have, this is the idea of security here. So we have someone who puts up security for another will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to strike hands. Striking hands, by the way, is not like slap you in the face kind of thing. That's just like our handshake today. It's a pledge, like, yes, we're doing this. It's a business agreement. So there's some wisdom there, right? What's the danger in putting up security for another person?
You're on the hook.
You're on the hook. Yes. And a lot of times you need to ask yourself the question, why don't you have the money saved up to put down for this situation? A lot of times there are some very good reasons. So notice, by the way, it doesn't say that you're sinning. And I think that's an important distinction to make. It's not saying that some of these things that you never do that is just wrong. No, it's just saying as a general principle, this is the contrast. We have someone that's not so responsible, and then we have someone that might be a little bit more conservative, and we see the contrast between these two. Someone who's willing to put up their wealth as collateral for somebody else, and in this case, the Hebrew word, I believe, refers to a stranger. It can result in some financial trouble that you get into. And so it's accounting the cost. You need to decide, and I've kind of been taught this, and I like this mentality. If you're going to loan to somebody, just don't tell them this. I'm not saying you tell them this, but when you loan it to them, just pretend you're not getting it back. Pretend like you're just never going to see it again. And if you can loan to someone with the assurance in your own mind that I may never see this again, then I say that's great. It's a godly thing to do if you can help them out. If it really is meeting a need, wonderful. But man, money, well, what does Scripture say? The love of money is what? The root of all kinds of evil. It's also the root of all kinds of marital problems and divorce too. This money thing. So we need to be careful. So much, what is it? An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure? That kind of mentality here. What is meant by deceptive wages? Verse 18.
The wicked earns deceptive wages, but one who sows righteousness gets a sure reward.
I like this. Anyone have a thought as to what deceptive wages would be?
Something illegal.
Working under the table?
Okay, yeah. Well, let's break it one word at a time. If something's deceptive, what is that? Being tricky, lying. I'm trying to appear one way, but in reality I am something else. So if you take that into wages, it's deceptive wages. it looks like you've got money, and you think you do, but do you really? One way I could illustrate this is the fact that I owned a house in the year 2005. The fact that I owned a house in 2005 meant that I was filthy rich, apparently. Because my house on paper that I believe we paid $79,000 or $80,000 for, at that time, it like tripled its value. You know, because in that crazy housing bubble. And so on paper, my house was worth this ridiculous amount of money. So I was rich. I could have probably borrowed against that house and got myself a few toys and everything. So how is that deceptive? Well, you guys know, right? That's the value we see right now, but it doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. Things can change. It's very deceptive. So literally, the Hebrew says wages of falsehood. So deceptive wages is probably a good example of it. It's something that looks like it's real, but its actuality, it's never really realized. And I think it can show itself in a number of ways. Sometimes you can get a lot of money, and then you find out, well, that's fake money. That's pretty deceptive. That's very literally deceptive. Other times, you can get rich and you think, man, this is wonderful. And then you find out that somebody just passed off drug money on you and now you get arrested for owning it. Well, that's kind of deceptive too. You thought you were rich, but you can't do anything with it. And a lot of people make the mistake of accumulating a lot of wages and then realize, I can't actually get anything with this money because it's either all wrapped up in this or that, or I got it in an illegal way so I can't spend it very easily. It's inflated. It's something that's never really realized. And I've constantly had to remind myself, you know what? Money is just strips of paper. At least most of the money I see these days that we're talking about it's pieces of paper. And if you stop and you look at it, you're like, man, the things people do for these pieces of paper, well, in their mind, it's because it represents something. But man, if you have a Christian perspective, you stop and think, well, you guys could probably educate me. You know more about economics than I do. What do paper dollars represent today? What is that paper representation of?
Gold.
Is it gold? So gold is kind of the standard or whatever?
No, it's been removed from the gold standard.
Oh, great.
It's nothing.
It's the nothing standard. All right. We can dream it's gold, but at one point in time it used to be gold. Now we wish it was, but it's not. Okay. Interesting. Even if it was, though, let's just pretend we got back to the gold standard and it was great. What do we as Christians know about every single thing on this earth?
Belongs to God.
It belongs to God, and God has told us that there's going to come a day where he's going to judge this creation. And what does he say about the earth? What's going to happen to this space? It's going to be destroyed by fire. All right, it's going to be destroyed, and we're going to look forward to the new heavens and the new earth, and that's going to be wonderful. But if your money is only as good as the substance behind it, and God has told us in advance that this earth is not going to last, money's a little deceptive there to think that you're somehow saving yourself with it. Now, it does have its value, but keep in mind, it's only as valuable as the thing behind it. But something is way more important than money, and that's obviously God, a relationship with him. Question number 23. What does the teacher compare to what does the teacher compare a beautiful woman who has no refinement? Somebody please read verse 22.
A beautiful woman who lacks discretion is like a gold ring in a pig's snout.
So, what's the comparison to this woman with no refinement, no discretion? It's a gold ring. That's that gold standard. It's a gold ring in the snout of a pig. Some things look out of place. And by the way, when you read about a pig, especially in Jewish culture in the Old Testament, you are reading about something that is a filthy animal to them. Pigs are unclean animals. They don't eat pigs. They have nothing to do with pigs. Not kosher, not clean. So, pretty insulting to take your gold ring. And Jesus used this example. He said, you don't give dogs what is sacred. You don't take your pearls and throw it to the swine, to the pigs. Well, why was he saying that? He's saying, this is unclean. This is a not fit creature, and so you wouldn't give it nice things. It makes no sense. Well, a beautiful woman that has, the Hebrew actually says taste. Interesting. A beautiful woman, a fair woman with no taste, is like a gold ring in the snout of a pig. So what does that mean? I'm afraid we might have a little misunderstanding if we take modern day use of the term taste. You know people with good taste, right? You know people with poor taste, probably. Yeah, what does it mean to say something has good taste or poor taste?
Judgment.
Judgment? Okay, that's a good way. Like when you say judgment, like preferences, you mean, or?
Yeah, like choices.
Okay.
Make
If
choices of
if you have a good taste in, I don't know, clothing styles, you'd say good choices in the style of clothes that you wear. You guys agree with that, or is he way off on this? I don't know, they don't seem to agree with you that much. Oh, okay, one person, two people.
I like it, but I'd go a step further and say social appropriateness, maybe?
Social appropriate, okay, yeah. So there's a little bit more of a consensus here. It's not just a, oh, I have great taste in my own mind, but good taste in socially appropriate. I like that. Well, I'm sorry, it's a long way to get around to this, but the word taste here, I'm convinced is probably not used the way we use it. So I want to make sure we understand it. That's probably why the translators opt for a different word, because it is the Hebrew word for taste. But there's another passage. It's in Psalm 34. It says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Well, that uses the same Hebrew word for taste. But we're not saying that, you know, have a good sense of style and see that God is good, or have a good social nature about yourself and see. No. We're talking about the literal taste this, envelop this, eat this. Bring God into your life and see that He is good. It's what you experience with your senses. And that's what I would suggest. A woman who knows how to do what is right because she can respond properly to her senses. She has taste, so she can read a situation and know this is appropriate behavior, this is not appropriate behavior. This is what should be done, this is what shouldn't be done. So it's similar, but yet it's different. I think she has some really good discernment there. And when she doesn't, it's just really out of place. It's not a pretty picture. So a lot of times, no, I'll just leave it at that. Any other comments about the pig snout or this woman? Any thoughts? Okay, all right. I'll leave it at that then. Interesting. How does the teacher encourage generosity? Verses 24 through 26.
There is one who scatters and yet increases all the more. And there is one who withholds what is justly due, and yet it results only in want. The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered. He who withholds grain, the people will curse him, but blessing will be on the head of him who sells it.
Wonderful. So how's the teacher promoting generosity here? You give freely and you become wealthy? Yeah. What about the alternative? What if you decide not to be generous? Poverty. Why? What do people think about someone who is a Scrooge with what they have? Yeah, they don't like that person. That's the person that they talk bad about behind their back because they withhold things that they could help each other out. Now another, Hebrew has very good picture words. When it says a person will be prosperous, the Hebrew literally says made fat. Made fat. Now, that's in America, that may not seem so, well, I don't know. I think it's a great example. This sounds a little bad, I guess, so I want to be careful the way I say it. But on the missions trips I took to Haiti, I could observe the culture there. And it's a very, very poor culture. And I have a pretty good guess. I could tell you a pretty good guess as to what individuals were more on the poor scale of things and the fewer individuals that were a little bit better off were connected to people who were better off. You know how I could tell? They were fatter. They were fatter, and it's not a joke. That's for real. A lot of these Haitian workers and other people I saw, every one of them skinny as a rail, hard workers, great people. But there are a few of them that had a little bit more weight, and I can put two and two together here. I may not be the smartest, but okay, everyone around here is skinny. And by the way, that's not just the people; they're chickens. They're chickens. We're the skinniest chickens I've ever had in my life. It looks like a chicken that's already been, like the bone's already been eaten and that little stuff left on the side. That is what the fresh chicken bone is like over there in Haiti. So it wasn't hard for me to figure out, you are doing all right. You are prosperous. And it's obvious. You can tell by looking. Just like you can look at me and say, okay, you haven't missed too many meals. Well, that's a logical deduction. You're right about that. And God is saying the same way. I'm going to make a person like that. I will make you prosperous. Why are you prosperous? Because you are generous. Isn't that smart but kind of counterintuitive? I thought the way to accumulate was to save. What is saving? Saving is where you don't spend it or give it away. You keep it and you hoard it, right? Hoarding and saving, they're kind of the same thing. So how is it that giving it away is going to, yeah?
And I think it goes to the first passage we read with not loaning to strangers, things like that. It's using discernment on where you spend your money and investing it in things that are prosperous and more specifically towards God's work, but not just, handing out to whatever and, eating a bunch of fast food or doing whatever, just spending it away however.
Well, that'll make you fat too.
Yes.
But different.
But you know what I mean, like, spending on things that will accumulate in, one, others seeing that you're doing something good, and two, can come back to you kind of thing.
Are you saying that being generous in a proper way to the right people is like an investment?
Yep. That's the words I was looking for. Yeah.
The shrewd manager story.
Mm-hmm. You want to recap it for us?
Guy was losing his job and he went out and pretty much gave to a whole bunch of people who were indebted to his boss.
Yeah.
And as a result of giving to all those people, he made life better for himself.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that the master who was going to, right, that's the one where the master was going to fire him, said, I got to commend this guy because he was shrewd. He may not have been the best with his management skills, but he was right about this. You invest in people and you get a better return, generally speaking. Generosity works that way. We know because God told us, but it's neat because you can't always figure out, you can't always see the end, but you trust God and you do see that it happens. And like any investment, things get a little rocky at times and people make mistakes. We have lapses in judgment and stuff. But I liken this a lot to how we trust God in giving. Giving is another form of generosity, but in this case, we are being generous towards God, saying, God, I trust you. Somehow the math is not fully adding up in my mind, but I know that you're the one that really has control and you can meet needs in mysterious ways if you want to. And you can allow that washing machine to keep running longer than it's supposed to if you want to. Or you can make it break if you, not saying that he always would do stuff like that, but you know what I mean? And I love doing this, by the way. I could stop right now and ask you guys to tell me stories about giving, when you decided to give and you didn't think you could do it, but you did it anyway. And I bet you just about everyone in this room, probably at least half of us in here, would have a story of, oh yeah, I did that. And then I got a check in the mail the next day. Wasn't expecting it. Or, oh yeah, I did that. And then so-and-so, this miscalculated and then they were able to, I didn't have to pay nearly as much. I got a big refund. Time and time again, this just happens and it's almost laughable how often the story is. It's so cool though. God has a way of rewarding and you may not see it. Well, that's what generosity is for us. That is something that we need to be known for as Christian people. And it's actually wise. It's actually a better investment. Why is it a sin to trust in riches? Verses 27 through 29.
If you
search for good, you will find favor, but if you search for evil, it will find you. Trust in your money, and down you go. But the godly flourish like leaves in spring.
I like that. Trust in your money and down you go. Nice. What translation are you reading from? I'm curious. New Living? That's fun. That's fun. Down you go. All right. Well, I have 3 different things here in my notes. In verse 27, I have trust in riches obscures worthy goals. It clouds your judgment from things that are really important. In verse 28, it leads to moral downfall. Trust in riches will lead to moral downfall. And then finally in verse 29, trusting in riches leads to greed, sometimes even oppressive greed. So there's more than one reason why it's a sin to trust in riches. But by and large, what is the main problem we have in the Bible with trusting in riches?
Trusting God, not riches.
If you're trusting in riches, that means you're not trusting in God. You can't have it both ways. As a matter of fact, that's not just me saying that. Someone a lot smarter than me, his name's Jesus, said you cannot serve what? Both. Yeah, you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and mammon, which I understand is also translated money. What's the difference between mammon and money? Oh well, we can talk about that later. Anyway, you can't have it both ways. So that's pretty clear for us. All right, we're in chapter 12 now. How does chapter 12, verse 4 underscore the importance of mate selection? Somebody read verse 4.
A worthy wife is a crown for her husband, but a disgraceful woman is like cancer in his bones.
Ooh. How would you say this verse speaks to you about the importance of choosing the right wife or the right husband? Does it speak to you? Single people?
You're living your life with, I think it goes, well, obviously I'm a woman, so.
Okay, gotcha.
In a man's way, like if I were looking for a potential husband, if I didn't choose a godly man or the right type of man, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with someone that, 1, irritates the crap out of me probably, and 2, just it, like they said, like cancer eats at you and like slowly just destroys who you are.
Mm-hmm. You're living with that choice. Very good. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? What does it say? A virtuous woman is what to her husband? Crown. What's a crown? Yeah. I used to mispronounce crayon and say crown, but that's a different thing. Crown is what goes in your head. And that thing in your head symbolizes royalty. And in the Old Testament, it would also sometimes symbolize victory. You were victorious, and the victor would wear a crown. Now, if somebody came in today wearing a Burger King crown, would you notice?
Yes.
Yes, you would. You would definitely notice that. It would be very obvious. However, if someone here today has a little bit of, I don't know, decay of the bones, would we all immediately notice? Think about that. Your bones are pretty well covered up. I tried to expose mine once, big mistake. It's covered up. You can't. You see what's going on here? If a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, I think that's the term crown is chosen on purpose because it's a visible honor. It's something you're proud of. It's not something you're ashamed of. You don't want to hide it. And that's the kind of person you want to spend your life with. You want to be with someone that you're proud of. And that's the kind of wife that a husband would want. She's like a crown to him. But the one that is not that way, that is shallow, different, maybe you won't notice it on the outside so much. Have you experienced this? I mean, I'm sure you have, but you've seen couples that you think, man, they just seem so good together, and then you find out later on that their life is a wreck, their relationship is a wreck. Sometimes you find out when it's too late, and you wonder, how did I miss it? How did I not see this coming? Well, I think it's the same kind of principle. If rot is happening, sometimes it happens from the inside. It happens secretive. And if you choose poorly, if you don't take into consideration, I don't know, the fear of God above all else, and the things that he has told you, when you are choosing your spouse, that's going to have an effect. And the effect may not seem bad on the surface, but behind the scenes, deep within you, rottenness of the bones. That's your, by the way, bones is kind of important in your body. If your bones have no strength to them, what does that say about you? You've got nothing. You're going to just
Collapse.
You'll collapse. You need that stability. And by the way, men, a good wife is definitely great stability for you in hard times. You know, you need one that's going to help your bones and that you can be proud of. Okay, so take that advice. What does Proverbs affirm about the house of the righteous person in chapter 12, verse 7?
The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand.
All right, what does it say? You're talking really quietly, but I think somebody said it. What does it say about the house of the righteous person?
It stands.
It will stand. It will stand. There are a lot of misfortunes in life, a lot of hard things that happen, a lot of enemies scheming for you, but you know what? His house will stand if he does what is right. Sometimes what is right is counterintuitive. Sometimes what is right doesn't always feel like it's going to get you out of a situation. It's that whole thing about, I don't know, telling the truth. Have you ever realized how dangerous telling the truth is sometimes? Especially when you honestly made a mistake. But in the long run, it's one of those things. The righteous person, their house will stand. How does 12:9 address the keep up with the Jones attitude?
It is better to be a nobody with a servant than to be self-important but have no food.
Yeah. So what's the contrast here? Better to be what?
Nobody.
Better to be a nobody that actually, not that important, but you actually have something going for you, something real, than someone who looks good, but when you find out they actually have nothing. They actually have nothing. One of the things that Dave Ramsey talks about, and he's kind of a pretty smart financial guy, Christian financial advisor, but I like one of the phrases that I've heard from him, and it talks about what we as Americans do. We borrow money so that we can buy things that we don't need. Yeah, we borrow money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people that we don't even really like. And yet that's the American dream in a sense, We outspend ourselves because we can. And then we live trying to catch up for that. But you know what? Why not have something real? Something that's you're not major in debt for, that you can't really afford, and you're trying to stress over living outside of your means. Why not have something that actually matters and be okay with it not being as much as other people? I believe that is called contentment. Contentment. Yeah, that's a good thing. Question 29. What is the link between righteousness and concern for animals? Verse 10.
The righteous man cares for the needs of his animal, but the kindness acts of the wicked are cruel. Are cruel.
Yes. So, how is there this link between concern for an animal and a righteous person? What's the connection?
Having respect for life.
Respect for life? Okay, how do you figure?
Well, in general, if you were to sit there and torture a cat, that's cool and unusual and terrible. So,
some people don't feel that way about cats, though. I know.
I'm not a huge fan of cats, but I wouldn't torture them because it's just wrong.
Okay, so general respect for human life. Yeah, that's true.
Well, not human, but...
Oh, for life.
Yeah.
For life. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, anyone else see any other thoughts here? What's the connection between the righteous person and concern for animals? How do those two go together?
We're all God's creatures.
The animals are part of the creation. And what are you and I? Part of His creation. Yeah, going right back to what you said, having respect for life. I totally agree. And scripturally, the rabbis got this right too. You can use the argument of the lesser to the greater. The lesser to the greater. Now, in the Bible, we do need to make this clear, especially in American culture. There is an order to the creation. There is an order. When God created all the things that He made, you know, the vegetation, the land, the seas, all that, and then He made the animals, the pinnacle, the peak of His creation was the creation of man and woman. And then He tells them, I want you to, He uses a word for having dominion, subduing this creation. But it's not as negative as we kind of make it out to be. But I'm afraid sometimes we talk about ourselves as managers of creation and being like in charge, but we sometimes soften it up a little bit more than maybe God wanted. We are supposed to properly, like a king in a sense, properly manage this wonderful empire that God has made. It's an expression of how much God loves us to think, you look around and see all this stuff that He made and He's entrusted us with being the managers of it. There is an order here, and we are at the top of this order. And that doesn't mean we dominate it or we mistreat it, we take care of it. Now, using that reasoning, if you know how to properly care for a creature, like an animal, how much more will you respect human life? Will you respect another human being made in the image of God? See, using the lesser to the greater argument, it makes perfect sense, especially in a culture like this where there's a lot more... I don't think PETA existed at this time, as far as I know. I don't think there was people lobbying for better treatment of animals. As a matter of fact, I think animals were probably not treated well at all. And yet you see things like this in Scripture where it says, no. If you treat them right, which is interesting, kind of countercultural, but at the same time, it also goes to show how we're going to treat others right too, if we have that sort of reasoning. So, reasoning from the lesser to the greater. Did that make sense? Or did I talk in a circle? Confuse everyone.
I'm busy.
He's dizzy. Woo, all right. I'm glad you're along for the ride. Okay. Question 30. What types of speech are characteristic of fools? Verses 16 through 22.
A fool is quick-tempered, but a wise person stays calm when insulted. An honest witness tells the truth, a false witness tells lies. Some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. Truthful words stand the test of time, but lies are soon exposed. Deceitful hearts that are plotting evil, joyful hearts that are planning peace. No harm comes to the godly, but the wicked have their fill of trouble. The Lord detests lying lips, but He delights in those who tell the truth.
Thank you so much. Man, all kinds of good stuff here. All kinds of good stuff. In verse 16, we have angry speech. Angry speech. That's characteristic of a fool. In verse 17, we would have what I have listed here as perjured speech, or in other words, lying speech. Speech that is untrue, it's lying. And then in verse 18, we have inflammatory speech. In verse 19, we have deceitful, tricky speech. And then in verses 20 through 22, we have wicked counsel, evil counsel. So angry speech, lying speech, inflammatory speech, deceitful speech, evil counsel. All of those things are characteristic of the fool. That is what you can expect to hear. Now contrast that with 31. How is the speech of a wise person described? Verses 23 through 26.
A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims folly. The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. Anxiety in a man's heart weighs him down, but a good word makes him glad. One who is righteous is a guide to his neighbor, but the way of the wicked leads him astray.
Thank you. So, we have a contrast here. In verse 23 and verse 24, we have restrained speech. Restrained speech. And then in the 25th verse over here, we have encouraging speech. A kind word to cheer somebody up. In verse 26, we have guiding speech, because the righteous man is cautious in friendship. So we have speech that is guiding, that is careful. And so we have all those things. Now, what was the contrast we just saw? Back with the fool, we have angry speech, we have lying speech, we have inflammatory, it's deceitful, and it's even bad advice. It's all put together into one. But when he contrasts that, I'm interested in the first one he said, restrained speech. Restrained. Sometimes that's not celebrated as a virtue all that much, to be restrained. As a matter of fact, we like thinking about our freedom and how we're not afraid to speak our mind and how we celebrate that. Is that a wise thing to do? Apparently not. Apparently not. The speech of a wise person is restrained. Sometimes wisdom isn't knowing what to say, it's also knowing when to say it and what not to say. What to hold back. You could say it, but you don't. That restraint is huge. Verse 25, when it talks about encouraging speech, that fits into, well, verse 25 and 26 go along very well. If the fool is lying, if he's giving this inflammatory and deceitful speech and bad advice, he's here to bring you down. But you, on the other hand, as a wise person, you are encouraging people. You are trying to lift them up by the words that you say. And your words are not only encouraging, but they're constructive in a good way. They are speech that gives the right kind of counsel. Ephesians 4:29 in the New Testament. Paul, this is a famous verse about talking. It says, I believe it's the one that says, let no corrupt talk come out of your mouth, except that which is, now I'm going to get it wrong, except that which is edifying or beneficial. Edifying, that it may benefit those who hear. Anyway, you might want to look that up so you get it properly. Ephesians chapter 4:29. The thing I like about that verse, now I'm going to look it up. I can't misquote the Bible. How wrong would that be? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. Is somebody there who can read it?
But just us at the time, he who was born according to the flesh.
I think that's a different book here. I think Ephesians 4:29.
That's a Galatians.
Oh, you're in Galatians.
I was testing.
You're right before it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good point. Okay. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fit the occasion, and it may give grace to those who hear.
Yes.
Who hear.
Yes. Don't let anything come out of your mouth except that which is, in the NIV says, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. I love this verse because it lays out something that I think is key, and I haven't really heard it mentioned that often. All I've usually heard of is this passage. All right, I made this mistake too. Usually, especially in my youth group days, this was the club I would beat the foul-mouthed people over with. You know, you need to clean up that mouth. Quit saying that. Quit saying that. Bad word. Bad word. I was the bad word police. And I was good at it. My senses were just, I heard God's name in vain. I heard this, I heard that, heard a cuss word. And I could hammer people for that. And yes, you can use this that way. But I forgot about something maybe a little bit better. There's a positive here. It talks about what speech is for. And by the way, pay attention to that word only. Only. It says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Okay, we got that. Don't say bad stuff. But only, okay, only. So in other words, this is the only thing that should come out of your mouth. You tracking with me? If it's only this, that means this is it. This is the only kind of thing. Well, what is it? But only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. There's the speech formula in the Bible. At least I think. What do you say? How do you know if I can say what I'm thinking about saying? I'll tell you how you know. Does it help? Is it helpful for building others up according to their needs? Or does it benefit in some way? If it doesn't, don't say it. You don't need to say it because God's word says only that which is beneficial for the occasion, that it may, appropriate for the occasion, that it may benefit those who hear. That is our Christian formula for speech. So if we're going to start playing the club method about beating people up for saying bad words, keep doing that, but let's apply the entire verse, shall we? Every time we say something that is not really building anyone up, and it's not really a benefit to those who hear, that was wrong. You didn't need to say that.
That's where our mothers used to say, if you can't say something good, don't say anything at all.
Yeah. Might we, do we have to admit that our mothers had scriptural principles? I was thinking that too. Thank you for saying that. Any questions, any more questions or comments about speech? All right. You guys have definitely got the restrain part down. So good job. Wise people, you know when to restrain. Except Jay. We all know Jay.
He's dizzy.
He's dizzy. All right, we're in the 13th chapter now. We've got a little bit of time to jump into it. So why should we exercise discipline? Why should we exercise discipline respecting our words? Chapter 13, verses 2 through 3.
Wise words will win you a good meal, but treacherous people have an appetite for violence. Those who control their tongue will have a long life. Opening their mouth can ruin everything.
Yes. So why do we need to exercise this discipline in respecting words? It's kind of an awkwardly worded question. From the fruit of his lips a man enjoys good things, but the unfaithful have a craving for violence. He who guards his lips guards his life, but he who speaks rashly will come to ruin. So, what is it saying about this righteous person's words? From the fruit of his lips a man enjoys good things. What is that about? Enjoys good things. All right, well, what's fruit?
Food.
It is food. Grows on trees, last I checked. Or it's genetically engineered in some lab somewhere these days. But by and large, it grows on trees. And is it always on trees? Well, sometimes the tree is there and the fruit's not there yet, because it's not the season or whatever. Jesus talks about that in the Bible. But fruit is what you expect. It's growing on a tree, and it's something that you can consume. However, this is talking about the fruit of lips. How does your mouth have fruit?
The words
The
that come
words
out.
of the language.
Yes. Don't we have an expression? You're going to eat those words. What does that mean?
You'll be sorry you said that.
You're going to be sorry you said that. What you said has an effect, and that effect is going to come. What goes around comes around. It's going to come around and bite you. It's going to get you again. Yeah, the righteous man's words are kind, and they are designed to build others up. A righteous person is hopefully following the Ephesians 4:29 speech formula, and what that gives comes around. Yeah.
I was just saying, words are seeds that we plant.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea is what? A seed grows up into a tree, and it's a specific kind of tree too. You don't get a different one than the one you planted. It doesn't happen that way, right? So the very words you say, they're producing something. You look at the people that you're friends with, man, you can tell a lot about yourself, probably because you say a lot to them and they say a lot to you, and you can almost see the entire group affected by the words that are being said, if they're building people up or not. So you're going to eat your words, and my guess is it's wise to have something tasty to eat instead of something sour and bitter. So you'll gain the goodwill of your neighbors, you'll be blessed from God, But if you decide to not restrain that speech of yours and to just say what you want to say, your words can do damage, and that damage, that conflict comes around. I feel like this... no, I'm not going to talk about that. Moving on. Number 2, what is the outcome of the life of a sluggard and that of a diligent person? Verse 4.
The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied.
Okay, first of all, when I see sluggard, I'm tempted to think of like Louisville or something, and I'm pretty sure that's not how you're supposed to understand that word. What's a sluggard? Lazy person. Lazy person. So, what is the difference between the lazy person and the diligent person?
One has nothing, the other one has stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way it says it, because the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. I hope you understand the fact here that it's not that the sluggard is doing nothing. It says he craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. We're actually not talking specifically about work ethic here, although that is obviously implied. We are talking about 2 different sets of desires here. See, the sluggard, he does crave. He does want something. And I can only imagine that if he craves, he thinks, he fixates, that probably exerts a certain amount of energy to really fixate on what you want and what you desire. The only difference is the diligent actually get the thing that they're desiring, right? But don't blame the sluggard for a lack of mental ambition, because he wants it too. He may mentally want it even more than the other guy, but if he's just not a diligent person, he won't get it. Yeah.
A lot of, I know several people like this, and usually I feel like they expect it to be given to them. Is like one of the most common things is like, well, I did this, so I should just have it, and they don't work for it. They expect it to just be given to them because they want it so badly. Right?
I want it so bad. You have no idea how much I wanted this. Yeah. That could be the sluggard. The sluggard might be someone that really has a strong desire for it and has said that time and time again. But if he's not working for it, if he's not doing anything to accomplish it, it's not going to happen. Did you have a comment?
I was going to say that he didn't put forth the effort to do what needed to be done to get his desires.
You have to put forward the effort, yes. You have to put forward the effort. Somebody used an illustration that kind of helped with me. You could have the world's greatest home building crew. We'll just say it's a group of 100 guys that have built thousands of houses together, and so they're top notch, they can do it quick. And you get them on a property over there, and you say, I want you to build just the fastest full-size 2-story house you can build, okay? There's the property, there are your materials. Now over in the shed, where the materials are, they open the shed, there's nothing there. And they say, and we tell them, no, you're not allowed to buy more materials, this is it, these are your materials, go build it. Well, they are the best builders money can buy. How are they going to do at building that house? Not so good. They don't have any materials. However, if you get just one builder that's okay, but you give him an unlimited supply of materials, can the house get built? Might take a little bit of time, but yeah, he can build it. He has the potential to build it because he has what he needs. You might have all the ambition in the world. You have a drive for this. You deserve it. I can tell you why. That's great. What are you doing? That's a sluggard. The sluggard wants it, but you're not going to get it. It's not just ambition. It's sometimes just good old-fashioned.
Seth, you brought back a memory.
Is that good or bad?
Well, it's kind of odd. When I started working at the Space Center, I went with this crew to do there was rusty gauges, sand them down and paint them and all that. And then every time we did work, we wrote it in a book of what we did. Anyway, 2 of the guys came up to me later on that day, said, Locklear, slow it down, because if you're busting your butt getting all this done, because I was trying to impress everybody, they'll expect that every day. So we want you to, just get a couple gauges done and kind of take the time and, hang out off the shovel rack. And I have to admit, I became a sluggard after a while.
Don't make the rest of us look bad. Yeah, that's one way to. Boy,
A lot of that
boy, is
went
that
on
true though?
there.
Doing the right thing doesn't always feel that good. All right, what causes quarrels to fester and grow? Verse 10.
Pride only breeds quarrels, but wisdom is found in those who take advice.
So what breeds these quarrels?
Pride.
Pride, yes. What is wealth gotten by vanity, and what happens to such wealth? Verse 11.
Wealth from get-rich-quick schemes quickly disappears, wealth from hard work grows over time.
Is that a New Living Translation?
Yes.
Wow. So sometimes that's pretty helpful. Well, what do you guys think? Is that because it literally says, wealth gotten by vanity or deceptive wealth. So, get-rich-quick schemes? Do you think that's a good translation of deceptive wealth? Wealth gotten by emptiness, vanity?
Like people, my first thought of people like that either steal or like sell drugs, whatever, to get, they want this house and family and blah, 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 and that's their goal, but they go about it in a deceptive way, and that quickly it keeps falling in there. Oh, I'm too entitled, like the whole entitled thing. It's like, I've been working so hard, blah, 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 but you're going about it the wrong way. If you were finish school, do what you need to do, things like that, it might be a slower path, but it builds the right kind of foundation to keep what you have.
Yes. Very true. Money that you get that way is typically easy come, easy go, right? Yeah. If it's dishonest, if it's just by lucky means or whatever, you try to shortcut to the end. Yeah, you might get it, but it doesn't mean you'll keep it. It doesn't mean you know how to manage it. By the way, when you save up, what are some advantages, by the way, to saving up money slowly? How does that help you keep your money by saving it in a more, traditional, slow fashion? How does that help?
You appreciate it more.
You do, right? But why do you appreciate it more?
Took longer.
I'd like to think I appreciate money as much as the next guy, and why can't you just give me more of it and I'll just appreciate it a lot?
Builds discipline. So.
Yeah, every time I have another dollar, what is that? Ooh,
You work for it.
that's a bag of gummy worms. But if I wait next week, it's $2. What's $2? 2 bags of gummy worms. You see where this is going? And then pretty soon it just grows and grows, and hundreds of dollars. What could I buy with that? And then you start fantasizing, and you've had to fight all those battles in your mind that were trying to tell you to spend this money and get rid of it. So when I've observed this, by the way, and I don't want to stereotype too much, but sometimes some people who are really wealthy tend to be pretty stingy at times. You notice that? Like, man, why don't you all the time, buy all these lotto tickets and drinks at the gas station and stuff? Why aren't you? I don't know, but I suspect it's because they know the value of a dollar, because they have a lot of dollars and they've learned to appreciate it. And they tend to hold on to their wealth. So I think there is some wisdom there. Don't try to shortcut it, and if you do, don't expect to keep it. It's just not how it works. Explain what is meant by the word in verse 13. What does it mean to be pledged to the word?
People who despise advice will find themselves in trouble. Those who respect it will succeed.
All right. This one's a little bit of a trickier proverb because it literally says the word. People who despise the word. So, and on the contrary, let me look at that again. So, yeah, he who scorns the word will pay for it, but he who respects a command, literally the Hebrew says keeps a pledge. He who keeps a pledge will be keep their pledge to the word. So that's kind of confusing. See, they've translated this on the surface The idea of instruction. If you don't pay attention to instruction, you'll pay for it. But if you respect instruction or a command, you'll be rewarded. And as a principle, I do agree with that. But I just wanted to suggest, I think there's another way that this proverb could be taken. And that is when it says, it doesn't just say instruction, it says the word. By the way, another word for instruction, the Hebrew word is Torah. That should sound familiar to you, right? That's what the books of Moses were called, the Torah. And I believe that's what the Hebrew says there. So the person who obeys the Torah, aka God's law, is going to grow close to God. And what does that result in? They're going to respect. You're going to be pledged to that word. I'm not explaining this very well, but I'm going to try to mention a difference here. When we're dealing with God's word, it is the law. Under the Old Covenant in particular, where people reading this would have lived at that time, they were bound to it. They had to obey it. So what's going on here? Like, even if I don't want to obey it, I have to. It's God, right? So how can I scorn the word? How can I set it aside? And I think what he's getting at here is that God's law can be one of two things for you. It can be a duty or it can be a privilege. And if you grow closer to God, instead of just fulfilling the Torah, the laws like you're supposed to, you all of a sudden learn to love God. And it's like a pledge. It's sort of like a union that you have with him. It is something that becomes joyful to you. You're still doing the same stuff. But can people be doing the same actions but yet have a different perspective, a different attitude? Yes. I don't know, but I think this proverb, although difficult to translate, I think it's talking about God's law, and I think it's talking about the person that is doing it out of obligation versus the person that is learning to delight in God's law. If you had to name a man in the Old Testament times who over and over again said, God, I delight in your commands, I love your commands, who would that man be? You're right, David. And David is not just any man, right? In the Bible, David, son of Jesse, is a man after what? Yeah, a man after my own heart. Well, he's obeying the same laws that everyone else had to obey. How is it he was the man after God's own heart? I think maybe he learned some of this secret too. You learn to love God. And those commands aren't just obligations anymore. Those are actually delight, something that brings you close.
Yeah, I think as a child growing up, I saw my parents' rules and laws as something to, keep me under control and to tell me, just because they were parents, they could tell me what to do. But then as a parent, you have it's loving arms of protection. These rules you're just trying to protect your child and keep them from harm. And I think that, God's laws, like you say, it's either a duty or we see it as he's protecting us. If we stay within these boundaries, there's protection within that.
Like that.
Instead of just rules that, there he goes again, telling me what to do, And,
Yeah.
yeah.
You got that perspective.
Yeah.
I like that. Any other comments?
David did that constantly.
Yeah, he did. And yet he still messed up.
He was human too.
He was human. But man, God still said that about him. Let's pray. God, thank you for another chance to look into your word and hopefully become wiser because of it. Right now, I do want to pray that you would give us a better perspective. Because God, we know your commands are not burdensome. Yet we struggle at times, and we often find ways to make them that way or to make excuses as to why they are. But God, they're not. They are an expression of your love. So please give us that perspective this week. I pray that that this week, when we go through the routine situations of life, and maybe a few new ones too, Would you help us to see them differently than we normally see them, maybe from a more heavenly point of view, so that we can be better disciples for you. And I'm asking this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
They do, man.